we don't want people to go in there and be harmed by these teachings. So the symbol is very clear that if they're not going to invite gay people, GLP, LGBT people in, nobody should go in because it's a harmful environment. And the police then, after giving us a suitable warning, will arrest us and take us off by the hundreds to the jail. This seminar today is to train folks who will be marching with us, who can't get there until Tuesday, and to kind of present the various, good morning, no, we're glad you're here, and to present the principles of this kind of ACT UP pedagogy to folks who might want to try it in your own towns. This is nothing new, this is quite old. In fact, from the beginning of recorded history, nonviolence has been a powerful tool. So today, with Bill's help and with Laura's help, we're going to tell you about a nonviolence experience we're having Tuesday and talk to you about 4 or 5 arrests we had during the summer and the accumulated results of all of that. So, we'll start by passing out an outline. I'll let Bill get that out there. Oscar Romero, the Bishop of El Salvador.
We are here to remove the Blessed Sacrament while the town is occupied.
This is a barracks. This is a church.
What are you doing here? We are here to take care of the Eucharist.
Religion has gone bad. Religion has become the primary cause of suffering for God's lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender children. Without religion, there would be almost no homophobic force in the country. This little symbolic video says in his little last speech exactly what we're doing. We're trying to take back the religious institutions for truth and trying to help those who have been made to suffer because of the untruth within those institutions. We don't lobby much. We feel like Human Rights Campaign and our other wonderful lobby organizations can handle Washington. We don't do a lot of grassroots organizing against initiatives and constitutional amendments. We feel NGLTF has that well in hand. But we feel like all of the national organizations have their problem because of religion. That if the Human Rights Campaign would be free to go on to real world work, feeding the poor and the hungry, if religion wasn't constantly pushing these initiatives. We believe that NGLTF could do a lot of other wonderful things if they didn't have to constantly fight these fires. We feel that the fires that we're fighting all across the country need to be put out at their source. We feel that the religion, organized religion, is the arsonist. And if we can take care of the arsonist, then all of these campaigns will have a lot less work to do. Did you follow that? So a lot of you will come from places where you hate religion or you've given up on religion. That's okay. That's probably the smartest thing you've ever done. People come up to me and say I'm an atheist, and I say congratulations. Because, and that's what Gandhi did. Gandhi said, you know, if that's what religion is, then don't have anything to do with it. It's dangerous. But there are some of us who want desperately to get that untruth stopped. And so that's what Soulforce is doing. Now, what we have in you have in your hand now is a basic outline of the Soul. We follow Gandhi and King, who say, until gay people, till GLBT people understand that they are children of a loving Creator, they won't understand who they really are. Because they've been told so much that God doesn't love them, that God judges them, that they need someone to come back and say, bullshit, or in theological terms, Pulsgeschichte. Because we know the truth, and the truth is that you're created. And Gandhi says, be careful, don't define the Creator in the old ways. If you want to say goddess, if you want to say she, if you want to say Allah, if you want to say Buddha, whoever you want to call that Creator, that's okay. This is not a sectarian, right-wing, fundamentalist thing gone gay. This is an interfaith, ecumenical, where you come in as a Wicca and define God your way, you march with us. You got me? I'm not defining God. I'm a Jesus freak. Everybody knows that. They forgive me and we go on. But the fact is, you're welcome here if you're a Muslim, if you're a Hindu, if you're an atheist, an agnostic. An atheist, Gandhi says, is the smartest one of all. At least he knows that the descriptions aren't adequate. And so he's giving up on those, or she's giving up on those descriptions. And she, as an atheist, says, I don't know God. I don't know that there is a God. I don't even believe that there is a God. And Gandhi cheers and says, then march with us, because you're a person of faith. And maybe way out ahead of us. So please understand, when I say you're a child of the Creator, she, I don't have any kind of pictures of Jesus with blonde hair and blue eyes in my mind anymore. Okay. And you can't imagine what happens when I tell large university crowds of gay and lesbian people that they are children of a Creator and that God loves them as they are. Folks, we've forgotten how much hurt is in there in most of these folks. They begin to cry. They begin to, I mean, it's really weird. Some of them, we have to have people in the back for those who run out the door because they've never heard that before. And it sets up a discontinuity in them that just really needs to be healed. And this is, now it gets really tough. Because if we are one, then Falwell is one. If we are one, then Bishop Forenza and Cardinal Ratzinger is a child of God. And Gandhi says, he renamed the outcast in India Harijan. Harijan means children of God. He said to the outcast, you are a child of God. Now work with me to do justice. Because those sahibs, they too are children of God, only they're victims of misinformation, and they're doing wrong, and that doing of wrong, that doing of injustice, is killing their own inward spirits. So we can no longer hate, but Gandhi says, don't talk about their motives, because once you talk about motives, it all goes down from hill from there. Because what are your motives? So they can question you, and you can, what are the bridge tools that we have? He says, first we have truth. Gandhi's biography is called My Experiment with Truth. He saw his whole life as an experiment with truth. They're kidding me a lot as we carry the truth to our adversaries lovingly. That's a whole science that we're trying to understand. We Soulforcees are really having trouble knowing how to carry some of this truth and love when their untruths are so intolerable. We went to involuntary suffering, where we say we'll suffer, we'll go to jail, we'll take this abuse because we want to win their minds and hearts. Voluntary redemptive suffering. I'm going to show you a little sequence from Gandhi that shows the Salt March. And some of this stuff where they worked and we will not win this victory with our church adversaries, our religious adversaries, until their hearts are broken by our example. And right now, so much of our activism is simply in their face. And it scares them. They don't see any kind of love in that. They get really scared. And we're mad, and we get it out of our system, and they get more scared. And so it's cycles. They've got to see us in least the modes of voluntary redemptive suffering, and we're going to talk about those modes. And we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. This discussion is no longer fruitful within the denominations. It's over. They have spent 30 years discussing it, and it's gotten worse and worse and worse. What's happened against us more and more and more, the discussion now, if they ask me to go on Oprah, 3 times I've been asked to discuss this with people from the ex-gay movement, I say no. There's no discussion for me. A black person doesn't go on Oprah to talk to the Ku Klux Klan. We don't do that anymore. When somebody says, will you come and do a panel on the scriptures and homosexuality? I say, excuse me, you've confused me with someone who cares. I don't care about those texts anymore. The only time I talk about those texts are to gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender people who are victims of those texts. No more debates, no more discussions. Now we go direct to direct action. That's why we did 4 United Methodist, Presbyterian, Southern Baptist, and Episcopal conferences we went to this summer. We had about 500 people arrested. We trained about 1,000 people on the site. We did beautiful, elegant, non-violent resistance. We stood, we blocked an entrance that had been carefully arranged, or an exit that had been carefully arranged so that no convention person, delegate, would be harmed, would be frightened, or would be in any way hindered. And as people came up and saw us doing our people came up and saw people and they saw our Soulforce, hundreds of delegates wearing these shirts, there was weeping and unbelievable kinds of responses. Our goal is reconciliation. Dr. King said, I don't want to end segregation. We can end segregation by killing all the segregationists. And we could, he said. I want to bring in the beloved community where I can live next door to Governor Wallace. Governor Wallace can change it. When he said that, Stokely Carmichael and the rest of them said, you have lost your friggin' mind. And King said, no, we've got to believe that our adversaries can change. And in that process, Governor Wallace, years after King was dead, said, I made a terrible mistake about black people and I'm sorry. Whether you saw that as an authentic or an inauthentic confession, it was a confession. And it was on network television, and he begged African Americans to forgive him. And Dr. King, wherever he said, wherever he is now, said, yes, they can change. Okay, now, it's 9:40. Any questions about?
Problem I would counter, this is the first time I've seen these this specific, but dealing with other gay people and who, especially those who are atheists, who don't see sort of the overarching redemptive construct of the fact that we're all children of the Creator, whatever the case. There is so much anger, and especially there's a frustration at the lack of effectiveness of, let's say, arranging to block an exit where nobody will be disturbed or whatever the case. And they'll dismiss that very rapidly and say, well, that's not accomplishing anything. We don't have time. Our adversaries, our enemies.
I'm going to be very specifically leveled and quite fairly. We're doing 5 major civil disobediences, including this Roman Catholic one, and then that's it. This is not what we do. We did this to announce our presence to the religious organizations, both solidarity groups and anti-gay groups within these denominations. That's been very successful. They know we're here. The Roman Catholic bishops, National Conference of Catholic Bishops, called us yesterday and said, will you meet with us? The bishops of the United Methodist Church called us before that meeting and said, will you meet with us? Everybody in the Southern Baptist called us and said, will you meet with us? And we didn't expect that call. Just between us, I got invited to the White House 3 weeks ago by Clinton, who set up a meeting with all the national religious leaders. And so in the state room, we talked about this with their denomination heads. And the truth is, we know what's happening within the denominations. It's not about GLBT people, it's about fundamentalism. Fundamentalism is what they call orthodoxy gone cultic. And within the context of these great churches, the war is on by the cultic forces to take over the denominations. What the cultic forces are using as a litmus test for orthodoxy is how you feel about gay people. So if you say, I like gay people, then you don't believe in the lordship of Christ, the inerrancy of Scripture, or the divinity of God. Got it? So they can't deal with our issue, or they say they can't, because it's not the issue. The issue is fundamentalism. So I said, okay, you're right. That is the issue. And they're urged to purge. We're the ones they're purging. But if you save your denominations by sacrificing us, your denomination isn't worth saving. So at this moment, for you to say, we gotta postpone your issue and let you die, no matter what, that's wrong. That's unethical, immoral, and bad theology. And that discussion is beginning to rage now. I went to the National Council of Churches headquarters, and there's the atheist is perhaps the most advanced persons of faith. And we need it, because if it's outsiders, even if they're Catholics, it's not the same. And they have had the faith in us, and have been frank with us, and have helped mold this effort, and I want to have you just chat a little bit about that if you can. A little later, we'll just talk. Okay? Thanks for being here. But nonviolence, I want Bill to talk a little bit about our vows.
One of the most important things we do, I believe the most important thing we do prior to any of the actions that we've done this summer has been pledge and commit to this set of vows, which I'm going to read out in a second. And it's 10 vows. It was actually written by James Lawson, who was Martin Luther King's nonviolence kind of guru and advisor. And Jim Lawson studied with Gandhi, or not with Gandhi, went to India and studied the principles of Gandhi. And really, just before the civil rights movement even began, it was just part of the process that was. I want to read them out. They were in preparation for the march in Birmingham in 1963, and every one of us signs this vow. It's on a card. We keep it with us, and it's how we can do this action without anybody getting hurt. And it's how we can do this action non-violently, no violence of the fist, tongue, or heart. So the first one says, as you prepare to march, meditate on the life and teachings of Jesus. And Jesus was the spiritual leader for Lawson and for Dr. King and for that movement. As Mel talked a moment ago, insert whatever image you want there. This is not about Jesus. This is about there's a force in the world that gives us meaning and gives us the zest to do what we're doing. The second one says, remember, the nonviolent movement seeks justice and reconciliation, not victory. For me, that's why we do nonviolence, because when there is reconciliation, then we can be together. If we're beating each other up all along the way, then there really is no reconciliation. We may come to a truce, but we're not really together. So through nonviolence and through loving nonviolence, we can get to the truth, and then there's real reconciliation, real relationship. 3, walk and talk in the manner of love, for God is love. I think Mel's talked a lot about that. Pray daily to be used by God that all men and women might be free. So again, it's not just, this was not just about African heritage people. This is not just about LGBT. It's about everyone. Sacrifice personal wishes that all might be free. The voluntary redemptive suffering idea. The basic fact that we are all sisters and brothers of the universe, and that whoever signs this vow is committed to making voluntary redemptive suffering on behalf of all people. Observe with friend and foes the ordinary rules of courtesy. Pretty clear, I guess. Perform regular service for others and for the world. Refrain from violence of fist, tongue, and heart. I've watched some videos from the civil rights movement and seen people had hoses turned on them, and seen people have dogs biting their arms and biting their legs and pulling their clothes off, and seen people have cigarettes put out in their hair, in their head. And those people have not responded to that, and it's an amazing thing for me, and yet it is possible, and it wins hearts and minds. That's there's no more powerful image than one of Romero walking back in that church. That was not violent. That was totally non-violent, and I can't imagine a more powerful image. 9, strive to be in good spiritual and bodily health, so that we can do this work. In Cleveland, when we were there with the United Methodist Church, when we were prepared, but in order to do some of this work, we've got to be absolutely in good spiritual health. And the last one, number 10, is follow the directions of the movement leaders and the captains on demonstrations. That's one of the commitments that we make is we can't all be chiefs.
What we do is we try to get a mass of folks who are really ready, and sometimes it's not easy. For example, we can have 1 million people march on Washington, but you find a lot of Catholics, let alone Protestants, who will march on this basilica and risk arrest. We have been party activists. We spend the weekend assembling and singing and going to the bars and going to the churches, but adversary carefully in print. You know, so many of us yell at somebody, you say all these nasty things, and then the media come to you and say, differentiate between the Catholic bishop and the teachings that he has to enforce. They are not our enemies. Yeah, there's a whole packet of them. This one is small enough, but we should be able to see it. We keep reminding everybody the case. The case is simple, that they say our relationships are objectively disordered. Say that. Objectively disordered. Which means basically we're mentally ill. They say that the teachings say that our acts of loving intimacy are intrinsically evil. Say it. Intrinsically evil. Which means God doesn't like them and we need to be forgiven of them. We shouldn't adopt, we shouldn't parent, we shouldn't teach, we shouldn't coach, we shouldn't be in the military, we shouldn't be married, we shouldn't be ordained. We shouldn't be. Yeah, right. My partner was with me when we sat down with preparation.
First, let me say that it really is an honor for Dignity USA to be collaborating with Soulforce in this effort. I don't know how many of you in here are Catholic, but you know, we are a quirky lot.
Amen.
We really, you know, on some level, we really revel in our oppression. So this kind of kicking it up a notch action is challenging for many Catholics. Bishop Fiorenza is the president of the National Conference of Catholic Bishops, and in fact has been responsive to our letters and
Go on.
and has been fairly non-responsive to the issues and the substance of the letters. So, you know, I don't expect much else. You know, Mel said earlier, don't forget, this is about Catholic Church teaching and not about Catholics. The question that I get, and Mary Ann we get this all the time. We come to an event like this, and they say, oh my God, you're Catholic? Oh my God, the president of Dignity? Like, why would you bother? Why bother? Well, in my own life, you know, I say, most of us, many of us, all of us in Dignity say, until you welcome us for who we say we are and not for who we do not say we are, then we are not welcome. But someone has to continue to knock on the door. Remember this quirky lot that we are. We have this teaching, and then we have the teachers, and we have the faithful. And it doesn't all mix. In my opinion, we've gotten exactly the kind of response that I would expect to receive from the bishops, from the leaders in our church. And I'm looking forward to being in Washington. Maybe some of you are going to be there, to stand at the shrine, to be at the Hyatt where they're meeting, to say, you know, we're here, we're out, we're proud, we're Catholic. All of us become Catholic for a day, by the way. Not Roman Catholic, universal Catholic. If you'd like to become Roman Catholic for the day, I will lay my hands upon you.
Tell me about the gallant call.
Yes, we're playing phone tag, although they assure me that I'll get either a page or a call or something today. We are expecting, we're hoping, that either tomorrow or Sunday sometime, we will meet with a representative from the NCCB. Four of them.
4 bishops.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
It's a committee.
Oh my goodness, it's a committee. They've met a demand, we can go home.
No, no.
I know. And that would be, not historic, but it certainly would be a new beginning. You know, Dignity USA has been doing this work for 32 years, faithfully, diligently. Now, do we do civil disobedience? Some would consider what we do every week in our faith communities across the country to be the ultimate act of civil disobedience. We meet communities across the country, most of them, as a matter of policy, not in Catholic churches, because we are a people in exile. Every week. In some communities, our priests who preside for us are married. Some have just left their assignments. Some are women. Some of our presiders are women. Some of our services we plan and preside ourselves. The ultimate act of civil disobedience. We share Eucharist with each other. Imagine that. So for anyone who's probably just a little nervous about potentially being arrested in this incredible act of civil disobedience at the National Shrine, I would have to say that ain't nothing. That ain't nothing compared to the life that we live as gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender Catholics. We hope that one of the outcomes from these couple of days is that the NCCB would establish a permanent committee, and a committee that would meet with real GLBT people in committed relationships, that we would talk, that we would dialogue. You know, we do have dialogue with a number of bishops. We have a number of supporters. Now we get into that quirky teaching and teachers and faithful thing, right? It's somewhat schizophrenic. You know? It is. So, do it.
Bless you. Thank you. I want to introduce another guest from United Methodist Church. Marilyn Alexander, will you come up, Marilyn? Marilyn worked with us for the, Marilyn's just been. Marilyn worked with us, she's director of the Reconciling Churches program in the Methodist Church. She worked with us for the whole Cleveland event. We're going to do a whole conference this afternoon, a workshop at what time?
2:15. A soap opera with religious people in it, that would really, I would win. The Amar Coalition were four different groups in the United Methodist circles that were working together on heterosexual legislation and working with delegates and to change the church and change policy and all of that. And Mark Bowman is here, and he
See you, how are you?
has been a part of that work.
He's a faithful, he's actually one of the pillars in our solidarity movement.
So, and so that work has been going on for 30 years. And anyway, so then when Mel started coming in, really the first interaction we had, Mel, was when I got a copy of the letter you sent to the bishop in Nebraska for Jimmy Creech's trial. And I sent you an email and said, please, Mel, tell me that this is a draft and you didn't do this. It wasn't a draft. So that's where we started. And from there, and part of it is Mel and I have known each other for a long time, and so we could start very honest and at that point, and then keep negotiating. And then as more people came in the Amar Coalition that didn't know Mel, we would go through that same process again and again and again. But it brought us, our groups, to a different place. Soulforce brought us a chance to meet and learn from leaders of the civil rights movement. It brought us greater diversity. So that's what we're going to talk about this afternoon. And if you have
a minister who was proclaimed by the United Methodist Church, and I was Reverend Creech's spokesperson and media coordinator at the time when Mel decided that Soulforce was going to come to Reverend Jimmy Creech's trial and block the entrance so that the trial could not take place, because basically what it was is an unjust law within the church, and Reverend Creech didn't want to be complicit in the trial, and he did refuse to speak. And so that's how I met. Well, I've also met Mel. I've been the co-founder. Be possible, or wouldn't be even worth happening if we didn't have the media. The media are the group that get our message out there, and hopefully the message that we want to get out there is what the media puts out there. But that's not always the case. So that's a challenge that we have. At the NCCB action, we face an additional challenge, and that's the fact that we're doing this in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is the home of the protest. I mean, if you want to protest, where do you go? You go to Washington, D.C. Well, the media is up to here with protests in Washington, D.C. So, what we are trying to do, or what I'm trying to do and working relentlessly at doing, is trying to make this interesting to the media. And this is news. And our purpose for wanting to get this in the media, and my purpose for trying so hard to get this out there, is not to get the name of Soulforce in lights. That's not our purpose. As Mel had mentioned before, we want gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender people to know that God loves them just the way they are. And without the media putting our message out there, we have the internet, but it's just not the same. The media is a viable resource for us, and it's tapping into it and using it that is important. One of the other things that really helps us as far as the media goes, believe it or not, is Fred Phelps. Fred Phelps is our friend. I'm not quite to the love him stage yet. But what happens when Fred Phelps has been following Soulforce around? Was he in Orlando?
Yes.
He was. Okay, so he's been almost at every single action that I can
We're gonna
remember.
make him a member.
Make him a member of Soulforce? Okay. I'm sure he's on our email list. But the point being is, when we're there, the media's there, and there's Fred Phelps with his vile, nasty signs and his fear and his ugliness, and then we're over here smiling with candles on, holding hands and praying. It creates a wonderful media image, the contrast. And when people see that, not only necessarily on the media, but in person, people see it and say, oh my gosh, I can't let people think that Fred Phelps is what Christianity is about. And they come to our side. And it's a wonderful thing. Supposedly, working real hard trying to get this done in Washington, D.C., to get the message out. Supposedly, we were supposed to have an article in the New York Times today. But the New York Times is sold out, so I'm like chafing at the bit trying to get a copy of this. We'd like to. One of the really nice things that's happening as a result of the media work that we do is, after the Cleveland experience, I wrote an op-ed piece that was printed, I think, in a total of 18 publications across the United States. One of them was the Southern Voice. And I got several emails from people who said, thank you Soulforce, thank you for your op-ed piece. I'm a gay man, I'm a lesbian woman, and I had given up on God. I thought God hated me. But because of your op-ed piece, or because of what Soulforce is doing, or because of what I've read in the newspaper, or because of what I saw in the New York Times, I'm going to give it a try again, and I'm going to step foot back in the church. And if that's all that our media work accomplishes, we've made a big difference. So, that's my piece, and I hope to see you all in Washington, D.C.
Gus Niebuhr, the religion editor of the New York Times, called me last week and said, I'll give you a story about this thing if you'll get Laura to quit calling me. Stop spiritual violence, and then the Catholic thing on the back, or the Protestant, or the Presbyterian. And everybody wears...
Eat and hang out, and never hang out in gay bars, something like that. So I didn't know hardly anything about transgender people until Soulforce. And even in my writing, press release writing, which I've been doing for quite a long time, I was never transgender inclusive, but I never knew I was excluding them. Until I came to Soulforce and I met transgender people and I got an education. And because of the education that I got from transgender people, it transcends every press release I write for anyone, and I write a lot. So that was...
We do this because we have gotten over 80,000 letters since my book Stranger the Gate came out, and we have literally thousands every month from people who are being hurt by their churches. This letter, these are just recent ones, I just pulled them out, but look at the handwriting. Their average is 12 pages long, single spaced. On email too. Endless emails. Dear Mr. White, I'm so scared and so confused, I don't know what to do or who to believe anymore. Sometimes I wish that I wasn't gay at all. Life would be much easier then. I wish that Jesus and God would have made the subject of homosexuality clearer in the Bible. Didn't God realize that people would use and abuse this subject? It's not very clear to me. I wish that I could just give up on God and religion, but I can't. I live to please God. I've run out of answers, and the next step I take will be a gigantic, fearful leap. Sometimes I wish that I could just die or be castrated. Then this nightmare will end. The next fearful leap, he's a 17-year-old boy. What do we know about 17-year-old gay men? 7 times more likely to kill themselves. I was going to read a lot of these letters because it's really important for you to understand what motivates us. We don't think we're going to change the minds of the Catholic bishops, but we know that by standing there hand in hand, there will be a lot of Catholics who see the media and say, look, those are lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgendered people like me saying God loves us exactly as we are. We're out there to tell the world that, and maybe change one mind or heart amongst the Catholic bishops. Did you know that we had 2 suicides during Proposition 22 campaign in California? Both Mormon boys, both on the steps of their churches. This is the suicide note from one of them, 22-year-old. The church has no idea that as I type this letter, there are surely boys and girls on their callous knees, imploring God to free them from this pain. They hate themselves. They retire to bed with their finger pointed to their head in the form of a gun. The church's involvement in this initiative will only add to the great pain suffered by these gay Mormons, and then he killed himself on the steps of his church. Let me read you one more. This is from the United Church of Christ Conference Office. It is with a great sense of anger, frustration, and sadness that I write to let you know of the death in our community, experienced directly by one of our community members. Cindy Hamilton received word earlier this week that her 28-year-old nephew, Mark Brennan, hung himself. He was a gay man. He accepted his this is the sentence. He accepted his sexuality until he became a Christian a few months ago. Understanding from the Bible and the church that he could not be both a Christian and a gay man, Mark's suicide note addressed to God read, I don't know how else to fix this. Now, here's the story of a young Hindu priest that was killed recently. Here's a story of Saudi Arabia, what's happening to transgender people, our Muslim brothers and sisters in that place. Religion is the source of our suffering. And here is the smoking gun. You remember the story in Sacramento of 2 young gays who were killed by 2 young men who worked for them, the Williams brothers? In the jail cell, Matthew Williams told his mother why he killed those 2 gay employers, a couple. This is what he said, listen. I had to obey God's law rather than man's law. I didn't want to do this. I felt I was supposed to. I have followed a higher law. I see a lot of parallels between this and a lot of other incidences in the Old Testament. They threw our Savior in jail. Our forefathers have been in prison a lot. Prophets, Christ. My brother and I are incarcerated for our work in cleansing a sick society. I just plan to defend myself from the scriptures. Soulforce is simply trying with dignity, with Amar, with reconciling churches, with the solidarity groups to say, the churches are the source of this suffering. It has to be confronted. You're welcome to join us on Monday and Tuesday if you can. I think it would be delightful for you and it will change your life because at the heart of Soulforce is personal renewal. Whether we win or lose, our own spirits are renewed in the process of doing justice. Thanks for coming.
www.soulforce.org. If you
Okay, give me just 1 second.
I'm going to let you say your last name. All right, we're here at Creating Change, and I ran into a really sweet friend. This is Belinda, and Belinda is part of the PFLAG organization. Hi, Belinda.
Hi.
Can you pronounce your last name for me?
It's Dronkers Loretta.
Thank you. I had trouble with that earlier. Can you tell me what you're doing here at this convention? And I know you're going to speak on something. You're part of PFLAG. How are you involved here?
I'm part of PFLAG, and PFLAG has Safe School Project. And I had been part of the Safe Schools Project since 1996 when our Fremont chapter also started. I was one of the founding members.
What is the Safe School Project?
Safe Schools Project is making school the visibility of gays and lesbian students and support the students, the teachers, and the community within the school.
How do you go about making that happen within the school system?
It's to provide training, awareness, diversity training for the principals, for the whole student body, schools, for inclusion of GBLT students.
What type of obstacles do you face in that?
Obstacles. I think this is a very difficult issue on this because it's a controversial issue, and the obstacles is we have to go before the school board just even to bring an awareness that the students are being harassed and teachers are being uneducated about who gays and lesbians are and about just the issue as a whole.
Do you find that it's difficult to get the youth to admit that they've been harassed against? Is it hard to find cases of youth, or are there more coming forward and saying, hey, I'm getting harassed, I want something done about it?
Well, I guess I want to say yes, and that's why this started in '96, because there were several GSAs in our area. There were 5 schools, and 5 of the school district high schools, only 3 had GSAs. And because they needed support, this was an initial start to make that happen.
So it's your presence and your work that's really helping them come forward and get the help that they need, and we really appreciate that. We really honor people in our community that make a difference like you, so thank you so much for your work.
Thank you.
Talk to you later. Let's go see what Rob Martin's doing. Thank God. Brian, sorry, but it's your life.
Okay, let's do it.
Oops. Okay, I'm here with Mary Ann. Let's do that again. Good grief. Mary Louise and Mary Ann. Okay. Hi, I'm here with Mary Louise and Mary Ann of Dignity USA. Mary Ann Duddy is your last name?
Yes.
And you are the executive director. Can you tell me a little bit about what this organization does?
Sure. Dignity USA has been around since 1969. We're the organization of gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgendered Roman Catholics, our families and our friends. And since the late 60s, we have been providing both safe spaces for gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered Catholics to come and worship God in the Catholic tradition. And as a national movement, we are working for education and reform in the church policies to make sure that folks understand the reality of our lives, how holy and whole we are as gay and lesbian Catholics, as bisexual Catholics, transgendered Catholics, and our families, so that over time the church will be able to fully embrace and affirm who we are.
You guys are very visible at these sort of events, like creating change and throughout the gay and lesbian and communities. Can you tell me, how are you visible within the church?
Within the church, we do a lot of outreach and education. We will go to parishes and talk about the experience of what it's like to be gay and Catholic, so that folks understand who we are and that we're probably worshiping in the pews right next to them, but because of church teachings, people often have to feel like they have to be silent about who they are, and have to leave half of themselves outside the door when they come to worship God, and that's just not right. We are right now in dialogue with a number of bishops around the country, again working to end violence against GLBT people, trying to change the language that the church promulgates that leads to this violence. We work to end the bishops' discriminatory practices in supporting civil rights or in opposing civil rights movements that would increase our rights and our freedoms in society.
How long have you been involved with it, and what brought you into it? How did you get introduced?
I've been a member of Dignity Boston since 1982, so it's been almost 20 years for me. And for me, it was simply finding a place where I could be all of who I was. My faith was so important to me. But as a lesbian, I had felt so excluded in churches for so long. And when I heard about Dignity and went to my first Dignity liturgy and found a place where I was welcomed for all of who I was, it really was coming home for me. So it's been a great experience.
Mary Louise, can you tell me about the meeting that you guys are going to have with the bishops, and also a little bit about Soulforce? I know that you're also working with that organization.
Yes, this Monday and Tuesday, Dignity and Soulforce will be attending the National Conference of Catholic Bishops. Soulforce is an interfaith coalition of people of faith working for reform in our churches through nonviolent actions. It's an exciting opportunity for Dignity and Soulforce to work together to call on the National Conference of Catholic Bishops to stop spiritual violence, to remind all Catholics and all people that the language and the words that we use can be hurtful, that they are hateful, and that they lead to emotional, spiritual, and physical violence against gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgendered people of all faiths. This coming weekend, we're calling on the bishops to stop the violence, to condemn the current teachings and practices that lead to attitudes that are hateful and hurtful, that lead to actions that are hateful.
What are the biggest obstacles that you face? I know that education is the most important for you, but what type of obstacles as far as within the church? Can you elaborate on that?
Well, I think one thing that is very powerful is helping all people understand that the bishops are not the church, that the people of God who gather and who name ourselves Catholics, who are Catholic by baptism, we are all the church, and we all have a responsibility for the teachings in the church. We can't just hand that over to the hierarchy. What we know from national polls, from our own experience, is that most Catholics are very supportive. They have gay and lesbian members in their family. They know folks who are transgendered. They understand who we are, but they feel very alone in that knowledge and in their support. And we're really trying to build bridges to help connect those people to one another and to help them reclaim their own power in the church.
Yeah, Joey, I think another tremendous obstacle is our own oppression as GLBT Catholics.
Yes.
We hear this all the time. The question we get all the time is, you're Catholic? Why would you stay in the church? You're not going to change the church. And in fact, will we have an effect today, tomorrow, or next week on church teaching? Maybe. Maybe not. But we will have an effect every day that we put ourselves out there and we say, welcome us for who we say we are. Do not refuse us in the church because of who we say we are. We put that out there every day, and we touch the lives of people. And that's so important, because that's our real ministry, is to touch the lives of people. And an outcome of that must be that our church leaders recognize that the policies that are in effect today and the current theology, the policies are incorrect and the theology is incomplete. And we challenge our church leaders to complete the theology and to join with the people of God in living out that experience.
What a pleasure to meet both of you. Thank you so much, Mary Louise. Thank you for speaking with us. There is a website that people can go to. It's www.dignityusa.org.
That's correct.
Is there an Atlanta chapter of Dignity?
There is an Atlanta chapter of Dignity. We'd be happy to connect people with that through the website. In fact, we're going to be having dinner tomorrow night with our Atlanta chapter and talking about what's going on nationally, hearing about what's going on here in Atlanta, and we're really looking forward to meeting with those folks.
Well, thank you so much for talking to us. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see what some of our other correspondents are doing. I think Rob and some of the youth correspondents are upstairs at some of the workshops. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great Thanks
Thank you for the
opportunity.
opportunity. This is,
Appreciate it.
this is what it's about.
So great to meet folks who are out there spreading the word.
Well, you know,
I'll be trying, let me tell you.
Hey,
That's great.
you know?
your organization is so
Do it.
important.